So I put here, look, I've got a cheat sheet here with stuff on it. But just to ask you, you all see keratoconic patients? Do you all see keratoconic patients? Yes? Yes? Do all of you fit lenses to a degree? Do you hate it? Do you find it challenging? Yeah, it can be. Why? Why can't I give you a map and say fit a lens? Do you get young men who go, oh, get it out, right? I have a young guy here. He comes in and goes, he saw one of my colleagues, goes, I'm going to go bash him and kill him. And it's like, whoa, stop. But he was aggressive, right? And he's just a hothead. And he made me pay this money for a contact lens, and it was just crap. And I tried to get across to him, maybe you could try it for more than 10 seconds and give it a go. And then I say to them, I wear hard lenses. This man fits them for me, right? I've been wearing them for ages. Did you try it for more than 10 seconds? And they won't. Got in their head, no. So there's a whole lot of things going on. I'm fairly harsh on them. Like, unless you've really tried it, I can't say that it won't work. And I think most people could tolerate a lens to some degree. I really do. Thanks, Mira. Let's go. So I like, when I did cornea, I realised that most cornea doctors look at the cornea and forget everything else. And I look at the cornea through the eyelids. And I look at the eyelids through the cornea. So I like all that sort of complex stuff. I think of myself as a bit of a reality surfer. Unfortunately, there's a lot of, we see today, reality TV and a lot of reality surgery has crept into what we do. It's the equivalent. So what I like to think of is, think of reality surfing. When you get talks or people come to you, I consider them a sales pitch in a white coat. Okay? I really do. I see them so often, and most of them are very correct, and they're very glossy, and the most make you feel good. And then, like all sales, designed to commit you to a sale. There's often a mantra. Philip mentioned to me a lot of stuff that you hear, and I see it repeated constantly, and I'm going to show you an example in a book that's just come out on keratoconus. This talk's not one of them. Okay? So I don't mind that. That's pretty much what I'm known for. It's a bit different, but I'm going to show you a couple of things that I showed Philip. I mentioned it before, I need you to understand your consenting. But before you get to understanding, you've got to have knowledge. And before you get to knowledge, you've got to have accurate information. And they're quite a leap. And everyone confuses them. We actually jump. Oh, I saw something on the internet. I did my research. And they jump straight to understanding, and they think they know. Okay? And we all do it. It's just the biggest, I actually think it's a really potentially good, but very troublesome disseminator of appeal. Most people do not know what science means, and I find this troubling. It's derived from the Latin scientia, which means to know. That's knowledge. That's not understanding, which is a human attribute. But it's through observation and experiment. And this is where we have a major problem. If you look through most scientific journals today, it's nothing to do with observation. It is somebody comes up with an idea, let's test this, let's make sure we can make it, prove it works, and then let's sell it to the public. You guys. Good science doesn't say yes. In fact, whatever ideas you come up with, 95% of the time plus, they'll be completely wrong. Last time you opened up your journals and saw 95% of the articles publish something negative was never. Okay, so we don't publish negatives. That's a problem. So we bias it, and it is very biased. And yes, unfortunately, it is driven for profit. So you have to bear that in mind. I know that sounds a bit negative. I'll explain the difference in a minute. It's not. You've got to have an open mind, and you've got to actually question it. It requires humility, and I often see people who will say, you know, pioneers of this and that and the other. That's not humility, that's a claim. Your ignorance, can you go back? For everything, I don't care how much you know, you're more ignorant than you are knowledgeable. Whatever thing. I still consider myself very ignorant on a whole lot of things. So you've got to understand that that's actually just the state of play. Okay, I said to you I'd explain. Can you guys give yourself a definition for each of these? I'm not going to question you. I'll explain it. But it is important. They're all very different. If you guys are trained in science, and I believe you all are because you have your degree, you're all skeptics. Okay? I don't like the word skeptic. It sounds negative. Oh, you're skeptical. Skeptic simply means you question. That's all it is. A contrarian means you deliberately go opposite. But if you question and you go against a mantra, you're a contrarian. A pessimist means you see the negative side, and a cynic means you see the negative approach that somebody's taking. Whatever they're saying, you're seeing the negative side of that because you're seeing there's an ulterior motive. So you're cynical about their motives. They're all different. But skeptic can include all of them, but fundamentally you're all skeptics. And you have to remember that. But you're also human, you'll conform, and you're full of biases. Have a look at the Wikipedia page on cognitive biases, and you'll realise how your brain will deceive you every single time. This book came out, and one of you guys sent it to me, okay, and said, have a look at it. So I opened it up to page 1, chapter 1, and look at the title. What is keratoconus, question mark, and in the same sentence, a new approach to a not so rare disease. So he asks the question, ignores it, and goes straight on to, oh, we can treat it differently. I went through it. There's not one definition of keratoconus. He's asked the question, hasn't answered it. I found that. Straight away, there's his bias right there. He wants to show you new approaches to a not so rare disease. We all say it's a weak cornea. How many times have you heard that? How many of you guys have said it? How many of you said that collagen cross-linking strengthens the cornea? You've all said it. I've said it because you were told to say it. I'm going to show you something on that in a minute. That's really simplistic. If you want to think about it, you've got the corneal collagen in layers, and then it crosses in a different matrix. And then you've got some intercellular substance as well. So what aspect is weak? Is it the intercellular substance? Is it the architecture? Is it the corneal collagen? Is it the fact that some corneal diameters are 12, some are 10? What is weak? The answer is you don't know. We don't know. Next one. So that doesn't explain. Have you seen keratoconus in older people? I have. I've seen it progress. Oh, one guy kept rubbing his eye like this. He's 70, he had cataract surgery, his vision was changing. I said, show me what you're doing. He's going, why are you doing that? Oh, it's sore. Can you just stop it? Right? The post-LASIK cornea, and I operate on these guys, feels just like a keratoconic cornea. Why? There's something going on. Just remember, if you have any condition at all, you could have genetic or controllable factors. Genetic, doesn't matter what you read about genes, we can't control any of them. Okay? It sounds great, it's sexy, give us money, donate to our research. But what you can control is the bushfires, what's going on. And what they are rubbing and inflammation. What does ectasia mean? Do you refer to it as ectasia? It's referred to as ectasia. If you stretch tissue, it'll keep stretching. So this is what you all know what that looks like, okay? I'm not going to go through it. Next one. Thanks, Mira. This is the way I define keratoconus. And I've defined it this way for a reason. A condition where environmental triggers cause a change in the shape of the first lens slowly over time. Get rid of the can. So that's what happens. So there's triggers that change the shape. And that's how you treat it. This is important. Every eye is so different. Have you guys not seen patients, I have one here today to show you, that have the worst cones and can read 6/9 vision? Unaided. -5, -8. And they'll read 6/9. You not seen it? No? You need to see more cones. And you look at them and you go, how the hell are they reading that? And then -5, -8, they're reading 6/9 and they're complaining about their vision. What does that tell you? It tells you hyperacuity. This digital processing unit, it's pretty powerful. There's hyperacuity. It also tells you, I use a logmar chart. I don't know if you guys use Snellen or logmar. I presume it's logmar. Sorry? Log or Snellen? I use logmar. It also tells you our charts are shit. I actually think, I tell my patients, did any of you guys have the old Atari games where you had the blocks going, chunk, chunk, you're moving up and down and you bat the ball? Things like that. You know, that's what they're seeing. That's what we're measuring. We're measuring using that, and they're seeing in 10K HD. And we're measuring using blocks. Okay? It's really bad. I don't like my logmark charts. I use them because I have to, but in fact you can tell in a heartbeat if their vision's better or worse. You ask them, they'll tell you. So every cone differs in sight, where it is, the severity, the symmetry, and that's the most important, the psychology. How they respond to their cone is huge. You know that cones are often myopic? I've got a couple of hyperopic cones, which is really interesting. How many of you have seen amblyopia in cones? You must have seen it, Steve. You'd be surprised. You put a lens on, you refract them, and he's going, I had one today, 6:15. I've been watching it for years. And he'll tell you, as he's watching it, the words, the letters are coming and going and coming and going. You're amblyopic. Hyperacuity, I've mentioned to you. Severity doesn't mean vision loss. And mind you, mild disease, and they can be 6/24. Hyperacuity, it's amazing. So just because they can see doesn't mean they're not severe. That's important because they can see something, but they're complaining. They can't sign a check. They can't do fine details. Their wife is screaming at them. They're screaming at their wife. Can't you see it? Well, no, I can't. It's really important. So, your patient suffers all these problems. Does anyone know what I mean by non-acuity symptoms? Patients come in and they can read down a bit. And you're going 6/9. That's not bad. You're doing okay. And they're whinging at you. Why? They've got headaches. They've got tension. They've got glare. And it stunned me after it took about 3 or 4 goes. I'd operate on them, they go, my headaches are gone. What do you mean your headaches are gone? My headaches are gone. Bullshit. And all you've done, I've had one patient that was 6/12 before and he went to 6/75 afterwards. And I said, what's your vision like? He goes, it's chalk and cheese, completely different. Severe cone, all these symptoms, bang, suddenly better. And they complain about it. So I'll operate for non-acuity symptoms. We're in front of screens, etc. And they're troubled because they've got headaches and stress and glare and they can't drive at night. They're what I call non-acuity symptoms, but they're 6/9 on the chart. So be very cautious of acuity. And psychological issues, they get stressed by it, they can't. I was just telling Steve today, I had a guy yesterday, had a transplant in each eye, 35, 36, new baby, second child, sits in my chair, 6/24 or something in one eye and 6/12 in the other, and I just said to him, you can't see, can you? And he goes, no. And I said, and what's more, I'll bet your wife hassles you about it. She goes, yeah, all the time. And he started crying. And I'll explain that in a minute. And he needs surgery. And I said, I'm not operating on you. What did I do? I said, I talked to him about lenses. You've got to get back into lenses. If there's one slide I would strongly urge you to remember, they're invisible cripples. And I tell them patients, and straight away they bond with me. Yeah, it's exactly right. And when their partner's here, I sit the partner in the chair, I put up their script, -5, -8, and go, have a look. And they're going, shit. Yeah, that's what he's looking through. So, this is what I was coming to you before about I've done my research. What does a patient know? What they hear, what they see, particularly in forums, and what they seek. If you're motivated to find something, you're going to find it. Okay? If you're motivated to find it, my friend said this, blah, 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 you're going to find it. Okay? You're going to find it, whatever you see. There's a delusional infestation syndrome. It's this amazing condition. When I first saw it, it freaked me out. And it's a psychological condition where this lady came in and she'd actually scratched out the front of her eye. I kid you not. She scratched it out. And I had to repair it, and she was convinced she was infested with worms. And she would come in and show me these things that she caught. You think so, but in fact she wasn't psychotic. Okay? And a family member of mine has had a very similar thing, and I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God, I'm seeing it in a family member. And she would come in every time and show me these things in her eye. Look at them. I'd put them under the microscope, and I tried to convince her with fact. Backfired. It's called the backfire effect. You show her facts, you reinforce her belief. You don't convince her out of the belief. It's the backfire effect. So you reinforce their behaviour. So, if they seek something, I've heard my friend had this, off you go. So philosophy of treatment. If you're having treatment, do you want to have one factor treated, some factors treated, or all factors treated? What if you can only treat one of 3? What do you do? Well, this is the thing. It's a philosophy. How do you go about your treatments? Why am I telling you that? Because if there's a new treatment out and says, you've got to have this treatment, it works, that's one treatment. What about all the others? Why are they suddenly redundant? Be very careful with new claims. So, if you have to have a treatment, you have to have a treatment, you have to accept your diagnosis. You have to understand it. Start by saying the name and spelling it. Patients come in, what have you got? Here it is. Go and memorize it. If you can't say the name, I'm not operating on you. Go and learn it. Okay? It's got to be individualized. Do you want the same treatment as everyone else? I don't. I'm not in their situation. It's got to have fundamental principles. A simple treatment comes out. Always, we love simple treatment. Simple, simple. It's really simple. A patient comes in, it's simple. I never use simple or easy in the same surgery sentence as surgery. And I've had people after surgery come and tell me, you said it was simple. Oh, whoa, stop. Never. Simple doesn't mean reduced risk, doesn't mean it's effective, doesn't mean it's better, but it does mean people are more likely going to take it up. Okay? If it's perceived as simple, it's simple. Patients will interpret it as low risk. It's not. So this is what happens in keratoconus treatment. You have patients that are misinformed, they're on the internet, they can't see or understand the cause of their suffering, and no one else can see or understand the cause of their suffering. Now imagine if you had chronic pain in your right hand, you're right-handed, and all the tests came back negative, and your family going, what's wrong with you? And you had this pain, and you said, all you would say is, no one believed me. How'd you feel? I would hate that, because you'd start to think you were going mad. That's what they suffer. All right? So, I started with the triggers that cause a change in the shape. So we'll go through that. Let's go. So, here's some terminology I'm going to give you. This will help you get through it. This helps me easy. I've used these phrases. I've got to reverse a negative habit. Rubbing. Nothing in the literature on how to do it. I tell them the negative habit. Zero pressure contact. What's rubbing? Pressure. I want zero pressure contact. I tell them they're an invisible cripple. The backward scratch. Does anyone know what that is? Turn your hand backwards. That's it. No rubbing. They all say, oh, but no, stop. Turn your hand backwards, use your fingernail, and do that. And it negates all your desire to rub. Backward scratch. And then I talk about vision stabilization. Let's make sure it's stable. Let's optimize it for your needs and restore it if we have to. And that's my approach. Does that make sense? So triggers. Again, I can't tell you how much, if any of you guys have had allergic disease, just trigger, treat it. That causes itch. Rubbing. Why do we have sensors in our eyes that respond to pressure? You ever had a toothache? You press on that and it feels good? You got them in your cornea. Why did evolution give it to us? I have no idea. All I can think of is we were fish underwater, right? We come out above water. Tiktaalik gets up on land and starts doing it. And then we get monkeys and we've got to blink. Any of you guys dove or snorkel? None of you have ever snorkeled. You snorkeled. Have you seen fish? Yeah. Look at them. No eyelids, nothing. They just sit there and look at beautiful eyes, right? Go to the fish markets and look at the fish. Beautiful eyes. Look at their eyes. It would be nice if it's flat and soft. It's an old fish. Go and look at them. Right? Amazing. You have similar anatomy. But we've evolved a mechanism to get us out of the water. All right? So we've got sensory receptors. Lizards lick their eyes. You know, we're from reptiles came first. They can lick their sensory receptors. When you blink, what happens to your eyeball? Does anyone know? You don't know. You've had the bell rails up. What else happens? Would you believe it moves back at least a millimetre, sometimes 2? Every time you blink. Don't believe me? Put a side mirror on your slit lamp and watch them blink. And the eyeball goes back and forth. So there's pressure sensors. So just imagine your brain is wired to say, pressure, stop vision. Open up eyelids, see vision again. You don't see yourself blink. Why not? I dare you to design a video system where every 10 seconds a shutter goes down and up for half a second and see if you don't notice it. Cortical suppression. Anyway, so you got those. Also, it feels good to rub your eye. Why? Triggers biological reward, just like drugs of addiction, alcohol, everything. You've been programmed. I can talk to you an hour about why we rub. Inflammation. If people have inflammation, give them Zaditin. Send them to an immunologist. Just fix it. Give them some steroids. You guys all prescribing rights? Give them FML. Give them Zaditin. Give them to somebody else. Give them some FML. Just a short course. Settle it down. Okay? Just settle down the inflammation. Or ice packs. Eye rubbing. We all do it. I've stopped many, many, many years ago. But Did you know that blind people rub their eyes? Why on earth would blind people rub their eyes? Right? What's that? No, there's a sensory, as I said before, there's reward, there's sensations in there. You get a response to it. It feels good. It's got nothing to do with sight. That's what I'm trying to say. They can get that, but even without allergic disease, they rub their eyes.
It's more like a massage.
It's like a massage. Why do we have a massage? You have intense sensory receptors in your eyes. You're like in your muscles. Jesus Christ, have you seen the homunculus, the representation of the brain to show the sensory input? Hands, the face, the eyes. It's huge. The rest of the body is nothing. Secondary keratoconus symptoms. Remember I said to you that people will be out there and they get all these other issues. They get a headache, they glare and tiredness, and I can't see. And off they go. Right? It's a vicious spiral. And if you underestimate this, you underestimate what they're going through. You guys go, do you rub your eyes? Yes. And you leave it at that, right? Ready? Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Number 6 is pull your upper eyelid down over that. Number 7 is nocturnal, lying flat when you're sleeping on your sleep at night. And number 8 is worse with obesity. If you've seen Watch the Neck tomorrow, when your patients come in, you'll see very fat people come in and they have bulgy eyes. Do you guys do exophthalmometry measurements? I do them on mine and I freak out and go, Jesus Christ. I've sent people to bariatric surgery to lose weight because they're so bulgy. Okay? These two, I'll show you a favourite patient of mine in a second with that. That caught me out so many times. Now I realise that it's like, boom, I don't even operate on you. You're too overweight, you're too bulgy, and you've got sleep apnea, and you sleep like this on your eyes, and you wonder why you got keratoconus, because you're sleeping for 8 hours like that. And people sleep on their hands. You sleep on your hand. Why? Who sleeps on their hand? They do it. Ask your patients. You're laughing at me because you're thinking, shit. No, I'm telling you. You ask them. You've got to see a sleep apnea patient sleep. Have you ever seen a sleep apnea patient sleep? You haven't. Do you know what I mean by sleep apnea? Right? These people will sleep face down in a pillow, stop breathing. They've got bulgy eyes, and they've got this head that weighs 10 kilos pressed onto a heavy pillow, and you're wondering why they've got keratoconus. Seriously. I tell my patients, I give them an analogy. They come in and I go, let me give you a picture. I like word pictures. I said, imagine an elephant tries to roll a grape. What happens to a grape? I said, there's your elephant's foot right there. I get these big Maori guys that go, you ain't got small hands, have you? And he goes, no. And they've got these massive hands, and it's like this. Keep, 300 millimeters of mercury plus, bang. Be very cautious. So that's how I classify them. And let's back, got type 2 rubbing, type 3 rubbing. I'm trying to get this published because I've been slack. But it works perfectly. And I tell them, the palm is brilliant. And, but these two, 7 and 8 are huge. The one that got me was people pulling their upper eyelid down over their lower. Why are you doing that? I don't know. So you've seen it all, right? You've seen it all, okay? This is the lacrimal salute, watery eye. Okay, that's the back of the hand, type 4. This one, oh, I'm only doing in the corner. Stop. I tell them, I don't bite. I've heard every excuse. So these guys rub, and it's very hard with kids because kids rub. Remember, massage. Most of you, I hate massage. I don't get massage, right? But most people do. And there it is. Look at this. I actually had a phone call from a colleague about a guy that was sitting in front of me. He couldn't get his vision right, and I asked him the question. I said, do a map. I said, now ask the patient, does he rub his eye with the side of his hand from the top down? And he goes, yes. I said, that correlates with the map, which showed a superior cone. Tell him to stop rubbing. So that there is type 1, and that is type 2. Some of your patients will do this. Most will do that, but some of you will do this. Okay? And she had a superior cone. I said to her, stop rubbing. This is the overweight guy I told you about. So overweight, and it's a pet thing of mine. One day he was here with his wife and his daughter, and he was desperate to introduce his daughter. His wife is huge. He's huge. His daughter comes in, and I went, oh no. She's 18. She's huge. I felt so sorry for her. You could see what was going on in the family. You can see the transplant. Right? Couldn't get it to heal. I did everything. You know, you hear this stuff about serum drops and everything, all that's crap. I did it all. Didn't work. Something's wrong here. something is absolutely wrong. I couldn't work it out. And then I thought, Jesus, you've done your plastics and orbits. This guy, his measurement, there's his orbital rim. His whole eyeball is out of the eye socket. Right? He's a 30 millimeter proptosis. He got goggles. We put goggles on him, he healed. He's rubbing at night, like that. Right? So when you get these chronic cones and difficult ones, there's a reason for everything. I've been trying to convince this guy for years to have bariatric surgery and lose weight. And he goes, I'm trying, doc, I'm losing weight. He's lost about 3 kilos in about 5 years. Right? He won't give it up. And he wants me to decompress him and push his eyes back, which I could earn a lot of money for. And I went, no. Go and fix the problem, go and have bariatric surgery. So I could push it back, but he's coping at the moment. Look at the lashes. Look at that. Why do you think they're down? He's lying on his face. Right? If that doesn't convince you, nothing's going to work. But these are the individual things that we cannot systematize onto a form. They're patient variables. Every patient's different. So rubbing. This is the first indication happened when I did my review a few years ago of cross-linking, which one of your colleagues and I talked about publishing in one of your journals. I pulled this up in 2009. No one talks about it. Cross-linking of one eye, look what happened. It reduced progression of keratoconus in the other. Why would that happen? You cross-link one eye and the other eye doesn't get much better, worse. Stops the progression in the other eye. Why would that happen? When you cross-link somebody and de-epithelialize them, guess what they do when you've scratched their eye and treated them? They stop rubbing. Right? So I actually argue that cross-linking is good to stop you rubbing, not to stop progression of disease. So that paper said it. So anti-inflammatory, you guys know Zaditin. You've heard of cyclosporin. All works. Doxycycline. Do you guys use high core ointment? Bloody use it. Prescribe it at night. It's unreal. Just give it to them. There's something called immunotherapy. Allergists can give it. And then I sometimes will inject Proptosis with steroids. Anti-rubbing. I tell my patients, look on the back of the forms in your thing. 3 golden rules. Don't rub your eyes. Use your drops. Attend your appointments. Don't break them. Don't break them. I won't accept it. Accept responsibility. I appoint the rubbing police, so the family member will come in, right, you're the rubbing police. I actually tell them, you are the rubbing police, you are allowed to rouse on them and you cannot answer back, and they love it, they work for me. They're my employee after that. And they tell them, because people don't know they're rubbing. After rubbing, they stop, and then I ask them all, why did you rub? Don't know. Don't know why I rubbed. And then they stay there. This is really important because it's true. Facts don't change behaviour. People won't change. They just want a pill. Give me a pill, give me surgery syndromes. So they're my golden rules. I've said them to you already. I've told you about triggers. Now change. You have your topography coming in. Use it. Do you have a pachymeter? Right. Do you know what I use mine for? To monitor the thinning of the cornea after cross-linking. I've got a microscope set up over there, one of my patients that I cross-linked, and then I had to transplant. And it's totally skeletonized the front part of the cornea. There's no cells in it, nothing, it's gone. It kills it off. I use placido and aberrometry. I don't use slip, I use that, it's more for refractive. But you know, a good art, you can pick it. I can pick cones on slit lamp now. Subtlety, no. But just monitor it for differences, but be careful, and I'll show you. So, define, remember I said define? They didn't have a definition of keratoconus? I define it as half a diopter steepening anywhere on the map. Okay? Not simulated Ks, half a diopter steepening on 2 sequential visits, not on one, at least 4 months apart. That's how I define progression. I will say time and time again, the mainstay of treatment of keratoconus is contact lenses. End of story. Cross-linking I do use infrequently. I'll explain why. Do you guys seen Intex? Have you? I had a guy come in, really interesting guy, sat in that chair there and bitched at me, not in a nice way. He goes, oh, I had Intex and it cost me 10 grand. I went, shit, can I charge you 10 grand for your surgery? And he goes, oh, I came into some money. He needed a transplant. And he goes, I said, well, how did it help you? He goes, did nothing. I constantly pulled Intex out. I'll come to that in a minute. I don't do full transplants. I think you can have laser treatment if you stop rubbing and don't show any progression, provided your problems are small. I do layered transplant or stromal transplant. I'm not going to go into that in too much detail today. Be very cautious. Please, please, please. You must see all the time, P is less than 0.05 proof effect. Bullshit. It's called p-hacking. You ever heard of it? You pick your data, you cherry pick your data till you get razor thin margins and say p is less than 0.05 and claim effect. Be very cautious. It's a real problem in modern science. Cross-linking is now a catchy phrase. Oh, I need that cross-linking, that laser treatment. Strengthening. How many guys have been told you that cross-linking strengthens the eye? I'm going to show you something in a minute. Intacs. You're told to think that it's weak and you forget the other variables. Intacs. My favourite way of describing these, anyone play with Lego or Meccano? Yeah? I call them prosthetic Lego. Okay? You get to build things with them, but it doesn't do much. Right? That's what intacs are to me. They're just little bits of prosthetic Lego. Medical WAFDAM. Does anyone know what WAFDAM is? Waste of fucking time and money. I just remove them. I've sent one patient in my life for them, and I'll never send another. I think they're a complete and utter waste of time. All the studies show you for 3 months, oh look, vision improved, yeah. Here's an analogy. Anyone jumped on a trampoline? I dare you to put a bar of steel in the middle of a trampoline and convince yourself that it flattens the central trampoline. Okay? It tends to stretch it. What happens to the cornea? It models around it. If you've ever operated on this tissue, it's so elastic, it just remodels around it. Waste of time. Anyone been sunburned? I have. Same thing as collagen cross-linking, UV exposure. It's a chemical reaction. That's like this lady here, Monica, came in last week. And many years after, I'll show you another map, she's just getting worse and worse and she needs surgery. You've got to be very cautious. Look, sometimes I will do it if people are absolutely non-rubbers and I'm sure they're getting worse on 2 separate occasions. Did you know that your cornea is cross-linking at the moment? It's getting stiffer as you get older. Did you know that? Are you aware of it? If you're a smoker, it's cross-links. If you're a diabetic, it gets stiffer and we can measure it all. So we can measure the stiffness with age, we can measure the stiffness with smokers, we can measure the stiffness in diabetics. Can we measure the stiffness with cross-linking? No. So you've got to start wondering about that. Because it doesn't stiffen. It thins. It skeletonizes and thins. But don't take my word for it, I'll show you the pictures. So it's claimed to strengthen. We can measure strengthening. It doesn't. It's claimed to cross-link. It sounds a good word. I'll show you what true gold cross-linking looks like in biology. And it's claimed to prevent the need for transplant. Don't take my word for it, I'll show you. What it does is, it denervates the cornea, it thins it, it scars it, and it takes away the cells. Why does vision improve? Does anyone know? Have you seen cross-linking patients? Have you seen scarring? It flattens, it thins. That's all it does. It flattens and thins. I don't see that as an improvement, I see that as thinning. So you've got a scarred, thinned, acellular, skeletonized cornea. Hysteresis, ocular response analyzer. What it does is it flattens, it sends a pulse of air in, measures the pressure, and then measures the ability to applanate on the rebound. So you flatten it, measure the ability to applanate it, and on the rebound, measure the ability to applanate it, and you get the indication of hysteresis, of strength. And you can measure strengthening over age. Next one. And there's no study that shows strengthening at all. In fact, they all show none. There's optometrical studies, ophthalmological studies, no strengthening. So, but what does the patient read? New techniques, new machines. Interestingly, the first protocol ever described is still one of the most effective, and that's the one I use. I've got to show you these. These are hilarious. These are website things. So this is in the US. This guy is some Olympic dude, some Paralympian. His only hope for restoring some sight was to undergo a transplant. He saw this guy who could save his sight. He had cross-linking followed by an ICL, a contact lens. And there's an implication that the cross-linking restored his sight. The lens gave him his sight back. But you read into it, it sounds like the cross-linking restored his sight. Totally misleading. Next one. This one. Look at this. For prophylactic use, virtually any patient can be treated to reduce the chance of having keratoconus, form-fruit keratoconus, or pellucid degeneration. In other words, we'll treat any of you to reduce the risk that you might get that disease. Seriously? That's ridiculous. Next one. So here in Australia, treatment will prevent the deterioration and the need for a transplant. No, it doesn't. I've got many patients that I transplant after cross-linking. Next one. And in Sydney, Patients who face the serious option of undergoing transplant may now have a new hope. Wow. God's just come down to earth. You know, I mean, I find all that just ridiculous paranoia and scaremongering. But that's what people read. When they do, unfortunately, I know you said this before, but when they do their research, that's what they read. Next one. You've got to read this paper. It's absolutely fantastic. And if any of you want to understand scientific papers and the amount of crap that's out there, this is great. On the reception and detection of pseudo-profound bullshit. Okay? Take a picture and we'll move on. Because there's so many of these papers. Next one. This is great. The more receptive to bullshit, those more receptive are less reflective, lower in cognitive ability, right? More prone to ontological confusions, that is the nature of being, and conspiratorial ideation, you know, it's all a conspiracy, are more likely to hold religious and paranormal beliefs and are more likely to endorse complementary and alternative medicine. Unfortunately, we're seeing a rise in all this. I like this conclusion. Bullshit is a consequential aspect of the human condition. Indeed, with the rise of communication technology, people are likely encountering more bullshit in their everyday lives than ever before. That people vary in receptivity towards bullshit is perhaps less surprising than the fact that psychological sciences have heretofore neglected the issue, and it's true. Do you know the difference between bullshit and lying? There's a great scene in the Blues Brothers, and Jake's talking to Elwood, and Jake goes, "It's not lying, it's just bullshit." And bullshit is when you don't care for the truth. Okay, you just don't care for it. Lying is when you're deliberately covering it. So usually you bullshit for social kudos. I'm bullshitting because, you know, oh, I sat next to Elle McPherson and she was chatting to me and blah, 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 blah. Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, man, there was other guys, but she was chatting to me. That's bullshit. Okay? Lying is completely different. So I think there's medical reality TV going on, medical rhetoric, and I actually think of it as medical Trumpism. You know, all the crap that he carries on with. Okay? We're seeing it in medicine. Not restricted to him. I talk about cross-linking as a ballerina hammer. It's beautiful and it's elegant, but in fact you're just smashing the cornea with UV light. That's all you're doing. And if we don't know how to cause the progression, how can we prevent it? And we don't. So I'm very cautious when I use it. When they come in, they ask for it because it's simple in their mind. It's really easy to sell. If I want to make a lot of money, I'll set up a cross-linking clinic because I never, ever, ever get called on the delivery of a product. I never have to deliver it. Imagine if you go to the Chanel shop to buy your handbag and you pay me 10 grand and I go, come back in 3 or 4 years and maybe I'll have it for you. Right? That's what's happening. If they don't rub, they don't progress 95% of the time. Some people do. I have once a day over many, many, many years in one eye. And what happens is as the tissue thins, it's more likely to progress. This is true gold-based cross-linking of tissue with nanoparticles. Okay? And you can see it by electron microscopy. We've not done that for cornea. But that's true cross-linking. Okay? We haven't demonstrated that yet. So is it just me? No. This one came out in 2014, and there's a whole lot of it. What it says is, it's to stiffen the cornea and stabilize progression, the characterization should go beyond just the shape. Because when you see studies and people say, oh, look, cross-linking works, look, the vision improved and the keratometry is better. That's shape. That's not stiffening. That's shape. Okay, we're talking stiffening, but we're achieving shape. Chalk and cheese. All right? We've got to go into biomechanical assessment. I agree totally. How do you do it? I have no idea. There's so much in that. It's critical for conscious optimization and further improvements. And that's true. I agree with that entirely. But guess what? That's boring. That's so boring. No one gets up in the comments and talk about it. Everyone's talking about the next thing. And one of the things you have to be aware of is it takes off in the US. Does anyone know why it always takes off in the US? They have a system where they're in Medicare. Do you know what Medicare is in the US? And they want to get out of Medicare and they can bill the patients. So as soon as they get FDA approval, they go nuts. And so all the conferences are full of cross-linking. You've got to be very cautious. Unfortunately, that's driving what you're being told. And the answer is, and I tell my patients, just don't rub your eyes and we'll monitor you. So I'll write later and go, just monitor him. I sent a patient today. He seems to be okay. Can you just monitor him every year and send me back as soon as anything changes? And I send him back to you guys. You can monitor him. But they have to be counselled and constantly reminded. Why? Because if you can't see something, you forget. And that's where the role has really shifted into counselling. Surface laser treatment, if you've got small disease and you're stable, can actually work and be safe. I might cross-link some of those just because it's said to be the standard and I have to not be seen to be bucking the standard. So I will operate, and that's a layered transplant. There's a reason why I use that pattern suture in some people some of the time. Next one. And here's a guy, and the reason I want to show you that is, see the stitches degrading? They're hydrolyzing. I say, what can you do? This is down to what you guys do. You can diagnose. You can counsel them. Okay? You can counsel them on change. You can counsel them on triggers, and you can control their inflammation. Seriously, glasses and lenses are fine. I tell my patients to stick with glasses and lenses. And I actually say to them, why do you want better vision? And they look at me. And I go, I know it sounds really dumb, but tell me how it's going to change your life. Why won't you wear lenses? And then if they can justify why, if they've got symptoms, etc., fine. We'll talk about other things. Do your mappings, look for progression, and the 3 Ps. If it's problematic, if it's progressing, if they've got poor vision, fine, send them on.